Welcome back to the Team to Beat Miami Heat podcast, your one-stop shop for daily Miami Heat content. My name is Amir. Before we get started on today's episode, just want to thank everybody for supporting the channel lately. I'm pushing to 3,000 subscribers, so if you guys do enjoy NBA content and, of course, Miami Heat content, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. So for today's episode, I want to talk about an article that I read, and the article said there are reportedly around 15 NBA teams that have indicated that they are willing to help the Miami Heat facilitate a Jimmy Butler trade, which is very interesting. So we know the chaos surrounding Jimmy Butler and the Miami Heat has kind of died down a little bit in the recent days. As we know, Jimmy Butler has played 2 games with the Miami Heat after coming back from his 7-game suspension. So he played in 2 games, and the first one, he scored 18 points, but you could tell he's just out there for a paycheck, and he's not super aggressive, super active, super engaged. Off the court, like, obviously you could tell he's very subdued and not really celebrating with his teammates. He seems very quiet and detached. And against the Spurs, he had the ball a little bit more in his hands, but he's still not being fully utilized and aggressive. And, the Miami Heat just beat the Spurs yesterday in a huge victory. And it's fine and dandy, I guess, but it's such a distraction still. And the vibes were great yesterday in that win. Like, winning here's everything, honestly. But the Heat were on a 3-game losing streak. And having Jimmy Butler on this roster right now, where he still wants to be traded, he keeps saying he wants to get traded to the Suns. And it's a distraction that we need to, eliminate as soon as possible, hopefully by the trade deadline. And so there has been new teams that have been interested in helping the Miami Heat star get to the Suns, I guess, or maybe a dark horse team. But NBA insider Marc Stein said, again, the Miami Heat are determined to keep exploring trade possibilities amid the concerns about how many games are left after the trade deadline. Like, there's a lot of season left. And so the Miami Heat prefer, and so does Jimmy Butler, obviously, an immediate separation. So per Stein, he said there are, again, like I mentioned earlier, many squads around the league that would be willing to function as a third, a fourth, or a fifth team that would help facilitate Jimmy Butler to go anywhere else. Again, ideally, he wants to mainly go to Phoenix, but some teams that are interested that have been listed over the last few days include the Toronto Raptors and also the Minnesota Timberwolves. So Marc Stein was saying, my pal Doug Smith from the Toronto Star wrote earlier this week that the Raptors are volunteering to participate in a eventual Butler trade as a third or fourth team facilitator that doesn't land Butler but takes part in the transaction. He also said, when I relayed that one well-played or play source, I was told about half the league has made similar feelings known to the Miami Heat as they try to come up with some sort of trade that ends this trade saga by the trade deadline. So the Miami Heat had 18 days left to figure this shit show out. So part of that group, like you mentioned, is believed to include the T-Wolves, which is interesting. But again, the Timberwolves are going to be a facilitator. We already know Jimmy burned that bridge back in the day. So when he had his unforgettable forced trade, talking smack on Wiggins and Towns. And so they have no interest in bringing Butler back. They just want to help facilitate. And the Timberwolves are trying to stay afloat. They were amazing last season. They won 56 games. And they've been terrible this season thus far in comparison. And the Wolves may need to bring in some sort of outside help and new rotational players. And their trade for Julius Randle has not worked out. Literally, this trade has been horrible for them. And because Jimmy Butler is expensive, the T-Wolves, if they did want to take a piece of this action, would have to trade some, lofty contracts. And if they wanted to, they can include players like Julius Randle, who they just acquired from the Knicks, or Jaden McDaniels for a piece that they could see as a better fit for the team. And if any of those two players become available, Jaden McDaniels, if you can get sent to the Miami Heat for Jimmy Butler, and the Wolves get whoever else from another team, that would be amazing, I think, for the Miami Heat because he is an all defensive team type player. So Rudy Gobert, obviously great defensive player, but also had Jaden McDaniels, another all defensive. I think he was second or third team last season. I don't remember, but having him on this team, we need him. All we have is Haywood and Bam really as our best defenders, and we need to surround Tyler Hero and other players with really good defenders and athletes as well. And I kind of want to take the formula of what the Houston Rockets are doing, where they have really long, athletic, versatile wings who are good at defense, but also super athletic, who are also growing and developing on the offensive end. But anyway, it looks excuse me, looks like there's a lot of teams that want to help the Miami Heat make this trade happen, and the Miami Heat are going to be having these conversations all the time, especially in between games. And I feel that Jimmy Butler will be traded by the deadline. I can't imagine him being on the team the rest of the season. It's going to be wild if he does. Anything's possible. So it is possible that he does have to play for the remainder of the season. Then he walks away or he picks up his uh, player option for 52 mil, and then we use it as a sign and trade so that Jimmy can get his guaranteed 52 because no one else has given him that much money. Maybe the Suns will give him that extension. But again, if he gets traded to the Suns somehow and Bradley Beal somehow goes to another team, then obviously he's going to pick up his option in Phoenix and then get an extension, apparently, according to the Suns owner. So anyway, that's all I have for this episode. And it seems like, hey, the Miami Heat are trying everything they can to separate from Jimmy Butler. And it seems like they might be willing to make that trade sooner than later to get him off this team, even if it means it's not the best return, but they're still not urgent. They're still going to be stingy. They still want win now players and expiring contracts. So we'll see what the hell happens in this Jimmy Butler saga.